Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Hybrid Friends. And again, happy to have my dear friend and colleague Steve back on camera with me. I think he now likes to be on camera. It's not the third time, so you're now a veteran. You're no longer a camera virgin. And today we want to discuss about the private usage of Private Link for Microsoft Arc and hybrid services. And yeah, as you know, Steve, I'm a public internet guy. I say everything is encrypted, everything is on military standard. Why should I use private link, and are there any downsides coming with it? And I will have some critical questions for you.
Yep. Yeah. Hi, everyone. Yep. So as Flo mentioned, we're going to cover Private Link and specifically Private Link scope for Azure Arc. So as you mentioned there, just for a number of customers, having that traffic going over the internet with encryption is sufficient. But again, there are in some scenarios where the customer just isn't willing to have that information passing over the public internet, even if encrypted. So the advantages they got there are that you can you ensure that any data that goes to and from your Arc-enabled machines is only through those very trusted, authorized private endpoints. Also, you can use express route and private link. So again, you can use those connections from on-prem across to your VNet where your private links are, and also again, all of that traffic will remain inside of the Azure backbone network. So again, you could go in through your local point of presence, but then we'll use the Azure backbone to get those service endpoints. Yes. So I say, well, maybe just do a quick sort of overview of the Azure Arc and the components that are involved, and then again we can discuss maybe one of those challenges that you do have with Azure Stack HCI. So if I just share my screen. Okay, so basically this diagram shows us the components that are involved. So as you can see, you've got all of your different okay, so this is the architecture and some of those components involved. So as you can see, you've got all of your different features that you get with your Arc-enabled servers, including policy and extensions, and they can then be presented via an IP address on one of your VNets, and then that can either be set to be private only, or you can have it private and public. It works very similarly to the way of, as you can see, there are other endpoints available for storage, for Azure Monitor, for automation endpoints, and then to get access to that, again, you can have either a VPN or express route to your on-prem. And then what that just means is that when any of these VMs which have been Arc-enabled, all of the traffic for that will come across your VPN and route across the VPN and go via this private endpoint. As I said, it gives you that that knowledge, and that is that yes, that traffic is only going to pass those trusted networks. There are some people, again, even though things are encrypted and things, are still a little bit skeptical when it comes to how that traffic will be when it's passing over the internet. So, and basically to be able to do that, it uses DNS. So on this next slide, see, this is an example where for East US, if you're going to set up a private link scope and a private endpoint, basically these are the URLs which need to resolve that are presented via that private link, that private scope. So to have those to function, you need these addresses, these fully qualified domain names to resolve to the relevant IPs on your VPN. So again, normally this is done via some via if you're using Active Directory, the Active Directory DNS services, so that all of your servers look to that those DNS servers to resolve the names, and then in this instance they would pick up the private IP addresses, and again the traffic would then flow across the VPN to your private endpoint, and then off to these Azure services, which can be enabled to sort of the extensions, Azure policy, and things like that. So I think, yeah. Any questions around that one, Flo, or?
No, but what a critical one. As you know, there are for Arc we are perfectly fine. But what about Azure Stack HCI? As you know, there is the registration service within Azure Stack HCI, and that one is using Arc, but not the same endpoint points like the server manager. And every time I use Private Link on the specific HCI registration, it fails. I need to use the public endpoints. So do you have anything that's known by Microsoft? But is there anything you would recommend to go through that or to resolve that specific limitation?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, as things currently stand with your Azure Stack HCI registration and Arc enabling of the nodes, that they do not currently support private link scope. So I have worked with a couple of customers, and the solution that we've used in those instances, I can just show you here, is that it does require a little bit of additional infrastructure. So as you can see, very similar to the first diagram I showed, we've got a zone in UK South with a private link scope, which connects to Azure Arc. And then we have a VM, which could be running Azure Stack HCI, or it could be just a physical server. It looks to the domain controller, and then on that domain controller, which is also running DNS, we've set up the required zones, as you can see at the bottom here, the required fully qualified domain names to those private endpoints. What we then did for this customer was we deployed a custom DNS server. So it didn't host any of the records for Active Directory. So what we were able to do is we were then able to allow that DNS server just to do normal external lookups and successfully get the external records. So they go via the public endpoints. And then we pointed the Azure Stack HCI cluster nodes to that custom DNS server so that they could then resolve the public endpoint addresses. However, Azure Stack HCI does also need Active Directory domain services. So what we did is we created a stub zone for the Active Directory domain so that any queries would go to this custom DNS server if they were Azure Arc related or internet, any internet-based records, it would go off to the external DNS provider to resolve those. But anything which was for the specific Active Directory domain, we had a stub zone which pointed through to the domain controller, which then allowed those the service records and the DNS records for the domain to be resolved by the domain controller. So again, when you were joining to the domain, when you were creating your cluster, creating roles on the cluster, they would then go through and they would query the records ultimately from your Active Directory domain services, domain controllers.
So sounds like a good workaround with, as you said, some efforts, but I think those could run on a few virtual machines or maybe on a virtual machine in Azure, instead of, let's say, purchasing additional hardware or anything.
Yep.
Okay. So it works. We have workaround for known limitations. Is there anything you would add or what you think needs to be added when starting with Private Link for Arc and HCI?
Yeah, so I I think Private Link scope, it's been around a little while now for Azure Arc. So and again within the documentation, it shows you and guides you through everything that's needed. We're hoping that this workaround that we've used in the past, although yes, it is a perfectly fine solution, it does require that additional that additional infrastructure. So again, you wouldn't really just want to have one custom DNS server. You would want to have maybe two at least, so you've got that high availability. But we have sort of fed this information back into the engineering groups. So hopefully, with in some upcoming release of Azure Stack HCI and the registration and the Arc-enablement, we can look to use the private the private link scopes for those features. But again, I think it's still a kind of just watch the space at the moment, and hopefully something should arrive soon.
Yeah, and I think you will inform us as soon as the changes are through. So maybe I can get you on an update video after Ignite.
Yeah.
Going through
Again,
the nice and lovely changes.
Yeah, again, it could be one of those things. So we're hoping there's going to be lots of new announcements at Ignite around HCI. So yeah, hopefully this may be one of them.
Yeah, not only HCI, we're also expecting a lot of things around Arc and new Arc-enabled services. So thank you so much for the quick talk, Steve, and hopefully we have you here again in the near future. So I will think on a new topic for you.
Yeah, no problem.
Any last famous words? Any quotes?
Nothing for me. I'm not a big one on quotes.
Perfect. And then for the others, thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel, leave us comments, and if you want to see Steve on an interview without me, just drop a note in the comments. Still try to convince him that he can be here without me on one of those. Then have a great one, everyone, and bye. And bye, Steve. Thank you again.
Bye.